Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. We're back here on a Wednesday. A little reprieve from March Madness. So like last week, me and Matt Wright are back to talk about the first two rounds. We're going to talk about everything that's going to happen this weekend and all the craziness that we've seen so far this tournament. But Writer, first two rounds, what's your overall impression on the tournament to this point?
My first two rounds, it's been an exciting tournament to watch. It's been I think I enjoy it more this year because we didn't have it last year.
Right.
But even though I'm saying that, it's been one of the most exciting March Madness tournaments up to date, in my opinion, watching. It's been probably a top three tournament that I've ever watched so far, and really looking forward to the upcoming games this weekend. I think there's some great matchups, but I don't want to jump over how exciting the basketball has been. Made for there were some awesome games. There were some great storylines, and it's really been an exciting tournament. A little bit of everything. Some winners, some upsets, some teams winning games they should, some teams losing games they shouldn't. But overall, it's been really exciting.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. You're starting to see some great players emerge. You're starting to see some great players get bounced, which is always interesting. But you mentioned storylines. Let's go through our best and worst of the weekend, kind of Dan Patrick style. What's the best storyline of the weekend for you?
My best storyline has to be the upsets. This tournament has set a record already for the most upsets ever in the tournament, and it's only in the second round. And they made that announcement before the final games of last weekend even finished. There's been that many upsets. So everyone likes an upset. Everyone kind of cheers for, if it's not your team that you're cheering for, you kind of cheer for an upset. It's good to see. And there's been so many of them. There's so many of those not really Cinderella stories, but there's been so many, 12s beating 4s and 11s, or 12s beating 5s and 11s beating 4s or 6s and 13s beating 4s or 3s. There's been so many of those teams that are there's been the Oral Roberts of the 15 beating the Ohio State. That's awesome. But there's been so many other teams that are 12, 13, 14 seeds that have been winning games, and that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, to that point, we saw, like you said, Oral Roberts. I mean, they're definitely the biggest Cinderella of the tournament, being a 15 seed, beating Ohio State, a team I think we both had in the Final Four. So good on us.
We both had in the final too.
Yeah, we did. That hurt. Then you had, Abilene Christian. Obviously, they did not win yesterday, but to beat Texas, I mean, hook them. They're gone. Oregon State. Oregon State was 12-11 on February 13th, and then they go on a run, win the Pac-12 tournament, and they're still winning now. And they look like a good team. They're going to line up with Loyola. You got Syracuse, who was an 11, but they look like a damn good team too. But I like your upsets. But what, other than say Oral Roberts, what was the win that really shocked you the most?
The win that shocked me the most, I would have to go with, I wouldn't say it shocked me that much, but Loyola State against Illinois. Just, they're both from the same state. I think the story of the smaller private school beating the state university, that story was really exciting to see. It made for a great storyline. But I would say Ohio winning their first game. That was a big upset. Abilene Christian knocking out Texas, which was great because terrible for me because I had Texas making it in my East. We picked 3 teams and I had Texas very strong. But I mean, my teams where we chose the top 3 teams, it's in shambles right now.
Yeah,
there's hardly any left.
Bad. It's bad.
But it really is bad. But there's been so many to choose from that it's hard to select just one that has been that great of a story, because there's been probably 7 or 8. You look at Oregon State, they're still playing. You look at Syracuse, you look at, the list goes on and on. Creighton, my boys, Creighton are still playing. The Blue Jays are still going. So there really has been a lot of storylines, a lot of good storylines.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to go with the Pac-12. The Pac-12, it doesn't matter what it is. It's kind of a punching bag. Football, basketball. I mean, you got 4 Pac-12 teams in the Sweet 16. We've been talking about Oregon State. You have Oregon, who beat Iowa, who really demolished Iowa. That was one of the more impressive shooting performances I've seen in college basketball. You got UCLA, who's already won 3 games because they won their play-in. And then USC, the beating that they put on Kansas Monday night, and maybe the most impressive win, just, when it comes to sheer volume so far this tournament. Yeah, it's impressive to see 4 teams from the Pac-12 get to the Sweet 16 in my eyes. And, conversely, obviously the Big Ten has been the failure.
Oh, absolutely. It will be interesting to see going into next year how the media and how the committee ranks the Pac-12 next year when seeding begins,
right,
from how this tournament has gone. Now, on the other hand, the Big Ten has looked terrible. Michigan, I think, is the only team left from the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It really bad showing by the Big Ten, really poor showing. Unfortunate to see, because I was pretty high on some of those Big Ten teams, and I know so were you.
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate to see. Some of the players in the Big Ten did play well, and I think another story is Cade Cunningham. I thought he had he didn't help his draft stock any.
Not at all.
Oklahoma State. He had 2 games where he played about 1 quarter out of 8 quarters where he looked half decent. And that was unfortunate to see, because I had them in the Final Four.
Yeah, he really was a non-factor. I mean, he like you said, 1 quarter. Other than that, I mean, this first game, I think he was 3 for 10 shooting. I mean, that's not going to get it done. And then, conversely, you had him coming in, and kind of Luka Garza was probably the next best player. He showed out big time, looked great. We were texting about him in his first game, and then he played against Oregon. He did everything he could to win that game, but his draft status probably moves up. But I don't know how NBA teams are going to look at him, because he's a center that he can shoot the outside shot, but it's not great. I do like his shot. I think he's got a pure stroke, but I'll be interested to see what this tournament does to his draft stock, if anything, just because he's intriguing to me, because I don't know how NBA teams will view him.
For sure. It's one of those things where in scouting, they say he does everything good, but he doesn't do anything exceptional.
Right.
Where he's an awesome college player. He does everything right. But will that translate to the NBA, where I don't know he can play the center position in the NBA? No. It'd be very interesting to see. Now, it was announced that they're going to retire his jersey in Iowa, so that was cool to see. But you could tell how emotional he was at the end of that game when he got beat out. That's probably the best player, one of probably the top 2 or 3 best players that have ever gone through Iowa's program. So it was unfortunate that he got knocked out. But I mean, at least he got to play, where a team like VCU didn't even get a chance.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, to bring us back, in the opening round, it was about Saturday night, 7:30. They were supposed to tip at 8, and you called me and you said, we got our first cancellation. It's VCU. They got a bunch of positive tests. The game's canceled. Oregon advances. And at the time, I didn't like that Oregon just got pushed through. I thought you could have had a team on standby or something, because it's still the opening round. I get it. After the first round, you're kind of stuck with what you have. But I didn't love it. What were your thoughts? But now that you see them beat, Iowa, did that redeem it in your eyes that they got pushed through, kind of?
I think it helped.
Yeah.
I think it helped that they went out and beat Iowa. Now, you could make 2 arguments. You could say that they were well rested, not having to play that first game. But if Iowa goes and wins that game, then you could say that the other line could be saying that Iowa felt better about their game. They got to shoot the ball. They came in already feeling the court, feeling how the game was going to move. They're in tempo. They weren't rusty. So there's a lot of different storylines there, but it's just unfortunate for VCU, for a player. Just thinking back, it's one thing if, last year I was coaching Pee Wee AAA, the day that everything was canceled was the day of our zone tournament. So none of the teams got to play and the season was over. That happened all over the world, of course.
Right.
But at least every team was done. It wasn't like our team didn't get to play and all the other teams continued. So for VCU, especially seniors and players that aren't going to be back, and it's not like you get to the tournament every year. That program may not get to the tournament for another 3 or 4 years, and those players may never get an opportunity to play in the tournament. So it's very unfortunate for them. Now for Oregon, there's a team that you got to kind of like the way they play. They got a really tough matchup, I think, against USC the next game.
Yeah.
That's going to be very intriguing. But we've only seen them once, but the one game they played, they beat, well, the team I chose to win the whole tournament. So you got to think that they had something cooking for them right now.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's one of the more intriguing matchups of the Sweet 16, and we'll get into that because two Pac-12 teams that have played each other all year. So they're going to know each other very well. But, there's a lot of disappointment. Obviously, we're talking about Cinderellas, but higher seeds going out, big disappointments. For me, the biggest disappointment, it has to be Ohio State. Just I had so much faith in them. Liddell and Dwayne Washington Jr., he had 4 chances to tie the game or win it in that last minute and change for Ohio State against Oral Roberts. And I think this program is going to look back and say, we just wasted such an opportunity to go win a national championship. But I look at them and I say, wow, what an opportunity missed and what a ugly, ugly loss.
Absolutely, Jug. I completely agree. And you there? We're cutting in and out of ink a bit.
No, you're good.
Good to go. Perfect. Sorry about that. Back to Ohio State. Yes, I think they're going to look at this and say missed opportunity, especially with all the upsets that have happened. You look at that bracket and the way it's set up, they could have gone all the way against some some would say mediocre programs. I'm not saying that, but some would historically would look at those programs and say this is the year that they could go all the way. So
Right.
It's very disappointing, especially getting knocked out by a 15 seed. I don't care who you are. If you're a 2 or a 1 and you lose to a 15 or 16, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And they should be embarrassed. And yes, you want to give as much credit as possible to Oral Roberts. Let's not take any credit away from them. But Ohio State was one of the best teams in college basketball all year, and they let an opportunity slip away. But that's the beauty of this tournament is it only takes one game. Take Herb Brooks. They may beat us 9 times out of 10, but not tonight.
Right. Yeah. And I look at Ohio State, it would have played Florida. I think they easily would have beat Florida. I think Florida's not a very good team. Then Arkansas is a good team. I think that's a tough matchup. But again, you see them playing Baylor. Who knows? I think Baylor's look really strong to start the tournament. They've been impressive. Obviously, they're a number 1 seed, but they're kind of showing out so far. But let's kind of take a look at our Final Fours and kind of just make fun of ourselves a little bit for a minute here. Who was in your Final Four, just to tell everybody again, and we can kind of touch on our failure so far.
Well, let's start. I had Oral Roberts. Going pretty far. No, if we're being honest, I had Iowa to win the whole tournament, and obviously that can't happen now. I had Michigan, and Michigan has looked good. They played a really strong game against LSU. That was one of the best games of the tournament, in my opinion.
100% agree.
Really enjoyed that game. I had Ohio State in the Final Four and also make it to the championship game. And we see where that is now. And I also had Oklahoma State. So I'm 1 for 4 in my Final Four. And like we said, we could go in last week. We could say we could have 4 teams still going, or we could have none.
Right.
And I'm down to 1 out of 4. I like Michigan's matchup. I think I do like Michigan to make the Final Four, looking at their bracket, who they're playing. But that happens with the other 3. Look at anything can happen this tournament, but you got to kind of laugh that I'm 1 for 4. It's kind of some pie in the face there.
It's better just to laugh about it. I didn't do much better. I went 2 for 4. I'll mention the teams I had that lost. I had Ohio State going to the final. Obviously, they lost to Oral Roberts in the first day, so stinker there. I also had West Virginia going to the Final Four. I wanted to pick Arkansas, but I didn't. I don't know why I didn't, but anyway. I didn't pick. I picked them. I didn't have any faith in Houston or they win though, so kudos to them. But I still don't think they're that good of a team. But on the other side, I have Alabama. They're still alive. They are playing LSU, which I think is going to be a difficult matchup. And I had Gonzaga. I went with the number 1 overall team just because I think if they lose this tournament, it's because they really screw up, because they are top to bottom. They're such a well-built team, and we talked about it yesterday. They didn't even play that well yesterday, but yet they still beat Oklahoma by 16. I mean, they've only had one game this year that they lost, 10 points or less. So they're a really good team, and it's going to take a really good performance to beat them out.
Yeah, I think that if they don't at least make the Final Four or the final game, the championship, then it was a waste. And honestly, you can make the argument if they don't win the whole tournament, then it was a wasted season because they're that good.
Yeah.
You watch the way they play, and they do it all right. Everything they do, you're watching, like, that's how a team should play. That's how a championship team looks, and that's how they should play. They can hit shots, they can play down low, they can play defense. If they need to score, they'll score. They need to make a stop, they make a stop. And if another team gets on a run, they find a way to put a stop to it. And that's what happens to a lot of these teams, and where upsets happen is where a team can get on a 7-0 run, an 8-0 run, and next thing you know, the other team doesn't know what to do because they're not used to being scored on. But you watch the game that they just played against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma went on a couple runs, and then if they made 4 points in a row, they'd go down, Gonzaga will go down and hit 3, or go down and score and 1. They'd find a way to stop so the big run never happened.
Right. Yeah, no, they clog everything up. They don't let you get too much momentum because they'll shove it right away. And they obviously got Mark Few there, who I think is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in college basketball right now. The way he's ran that program, he didn't leave it like a lot of coaches do. You see him go to Gonzaga not that long ago was a smaller school that didn't have a lot of pedigree. He didn't leave to take a bigger job like you see a lot of coaches do, and then they fail. He stayed there and has built this mecca of basketball that is Gonzaga. But yeah, I think they're so strong. In the big picture, obviously over the weekend we lost Cunningham, who could still go very high in the NBA draft. Obviously that's up for debate now. I think he was going to go number 1. He might still, but we'll table that for now. But with him out, Luka, Garza out, who's the best player in this tournament now? For people, the basketball fans saying, we don't watch college basketball all the time. Who's the player for you? They say, okay, he's now the player to watch in the rest of this tournament.
Well, I have 2 different takes on this. The first one I have was, we talked about players going into the tournament, and I said the big 3 on Gonzaga, where you have Suggs, Kispert, and Timmy. I think those 3, that package of 3 there are just so exciting to watch. And if you get a chance to, if there's any team to watch the Gonzaga game. Find a way to watch that way the team plays. Now, on the other end, I have to go Wagner for Michigan.
Yeah.
Wagner, Wagner, however they say it. It seems the announcers say it different every time, but that guy can play basketball. That guy can hit shots. He can play defense, and he stepped up. Michigan's big men down low have not played very well in the tournament, but Wagner stepped up, and he's played amazing for that team.
Yeah, I like that one. His brother has played Michigan before him, Mo Wagner. He's in the NBA, still trying to kind of find him, but his brother Franz is really damn good player. I think he can play multiple positions too, which makes him a really intriguing prospect. I like your Gonzaga. I had Timmy as well. Mobley for USC is Isaiah Mobley is another kid that's really good. The 2 brothers playing that team together, but he stepped up. And this player, he's not the best player in the tournament, but this guy, he's taken over 2 March Madnesses And you know who I'm going to say? It's
I
Cameron
know where you're
Krutwig
going
from
with.
Loyola Chicago.
I
This
know where
guy's
you're
got
going.
the dirtiest stash in the tournament.
Yeah.
Maybe, Timmy's is pretty bad too, but he's not athletic. He's not athletic at all. He's built like a milk bag. But he's their best player, and it works for him at Loyola, and the team just fuels around him. He's good in this tournament. I don't think he'll ever play in the NBA, but for this tournament, he's awesome.
See, he will never have to play in the NBA because he can retire by that campus and get a free meal wherever he goes in that small town for the rest of his life. He'll get set up for a job there, making a lot of money. I don't know where. He'll probably work at the university, but he finds a way to become a ball player, and not everything about him just doesn't scream ball player.
No,
but he finds a way to make plays. He works with what he has, and he brings emotion. One thing about him, he brings emotion. He's not afraid to hide that. And he makes big shots for the team, makes big plays. He plays awesome defense.
yeah, he does.
One thing that I don't think he's getting enough credit for is his reads. He reads the play very well. And one thing I can throw this to hockey, and one thing I try and tell players who I'm working with is try and learn how to play the game. So you might not be the fastest player, you might not have the best shot, might not have the best hands, but if you can read the play and be in the right positions, it's going to make you a much better player. And that translates to this tournament. You watch him, the ball seems to always find him. And on defense, he always seems to be making big plays. So you got to, it's great to watch because he's not your typical all-star going into the tournament. So he's one of my players I'm watching. I kind of get behind him. I'm not a big man at all, but far from it. Yeah. But I kind of like seeing a big man like that kind of take over a game.
Yeah, I like your point about him on defense. You see him come up with steals. He'll swat the ball away, and he made a play towards the end of the game against Illinois where he swatted the ball away off Kofi Cockburn, hit off his shin, and you see him just throw his fist in the air like he's so excited. And Loyola is this small little Catholic school, and you're thinking, how the hell did he get in here? this wacky guy, but he's an intriguing guy, and who knows, maybe he will get a look. I'm not saying he's going to get drafted, but maybe he gets a look in the NBA just based on his tournament and on his attitude alone, because we've seen like Taco Fall. He's still with the Celtics. I never thought he'd play in the NBA, and he really hasn't. He's played 2-3 minutes a night every fifth game, but this guy's going to be a legend of the March of this tournament forever.
One thing about this tournament is you can make a name for yourself and never play in the NBA and still be a household name, or someone you walked in the street. Hey, I remember that guy. I remember you played in the tournament. You were a hero and legend in that tournament. Right. And that's one cool thing about this tournament, this event, is that you can become a household name, but never make it to the NBA. And you look over the years at so many players have done that. And a lot of it is the players who play in the tournament for multiple years.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the big names are one and done players. But I think the better stories are the ones who have been there for 3 or 4 years, have gone through the tournament multiple times. That's how you become more of a household name in the tournament. Because for your average basketball fan who doesn't watch every year, they don't know the players, the one and done players, because they only watch the tournament. But for the ones who watch the tournament every year and see someone who's come back year after year, that becomes a storyline. That becomes a headline. That becomes someone that people can root behind because they've seen them before. Right.
And I think even for fans of teams, it's hard to get to root for a one and done player, because he's there 1 year. You got him for that year. You can enjoy him, but then he's out the door. And really, are these one and done guys really that committed to the team? I've always thought that, Ryder. I don't know about you. You're going to college for 1 year because it's an obligation. You're going because you have to get to the NBA. You have to go play college. You could play G League, but you're not going to go play G League. Maybe we'll see it more. But fans, you can root for Zion a little bit, but that Duke team a couple of years ago that had all one and dones, that was a hard team to root for, because you just know, okay, this team is a super team put together that's going to be here 1 year and then they're done. Like, so the likes of Krutwig, Loyola Chicago's got a lot of the roster that we saw in 2018. USC has a lot of the roster that we saw a couple years ago. So it's easier, I think, to root for these teams that don't have prospects that you don't really get to know.
Absolutely, for sure. And the thing about it too, it's a great story to have teams that make it year after year with the same players. Look at the Toronto Raptors and Fred VanVleet, Wichita State, him making to the Final Four, and then going back, look at Butler back-to-back Final Fours with basically the same team. It's great to see teams. I think that the chemistry you get from having a team where you have some older guys, some guys in their second year, maybe one stud in their first year, but your team has at least two guys on the court who are third or fourth years,
right,
makes a huge difference. And I think that's one thing about why a lot of these players that go in the NBA, you don't know whether they're going to be a good teammate or not, because they've never had to be a good teammate, because they know they're only going to college for 1 year. So why would you get invested in the school?
Right.
Not saying that some don't. That's not that some do, some don't. But some players go to college knowing they're already going to be going to the NBA at some point. So they never really invest in that college team. And at the end of the day, they don't really care if they get knocked out of the March Madness tournament. They'll probably care a bit, but would they really care that it's the end of their basketball career? No, because they know they're going to the NBA. You look at Luka Garza. He was crying thinking his basketball career was over.
Right. I totally agree. He played 4 years at Iowa. He was committed to the program there. He loved his time at Iowa, and it showed, because he was really crying. We saw Duke. I'm going to pick on Duke here, but I don't care. We see them lose I think it was this Sweet 16 a couple years ago with Zion. They didn't cry. I don't think they particularly cared, to be quite honest. And like you said, it is unfair. I think to juxtapose it, I think Jalen Suggs wants to win the national championship. He's going to be a one and done at Gonzaga. I think he really wants to win the championship, number one, for his team, of course, for himself. It'll help him in the NBA draft and many other things, but also for Mark Few. Mark Few, if you're going to Gonzaga, you're buying in, whether you're one and done or you're, a fifth year red shirt. You're going to buy into the Gonzaga program. So I think a lot of times it depends on the program, what they're selling, where Mike Krzyzewski in his latter years hasn't really paid much attention to buying into the Duke Blue Devils system, so to speak.
Well, if you look at Gonzaga, they historically don't bring in a one and done player.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to bring one in, they're bringing in a player that they want in the system and they trust, and that a player who's committed. And I love Suggs. Yes, he may miss a few shots here and there, but that guy brings intensity to the game. And he's a type of player, if he misses a shot, he's not going to shy away from taking the next one. But his defense, there's another player whose defense is very underrated. He is an absolute pit bull on the ball on defense. Mm-hmm. I love the way he plays in the defensive end.
Yeah, him and Timmy both really, they give it their all. I'm really impressed with both of those guys and the way they do it. So pivoting to looking at the Sweet 16, and we'll morph it into the Elite Eight as well as we get into this discussion. But looking at a team that's kind of a favorite, or just a team that you think will get to the Final Four now, say, who has the easiest path to the Final Four looking at our four regions?
Well, I'm going to make a hot take here. This is one that I think some people may not believe, but I think that either Syracuse or Loyola have the easiest path to the Final Four. Yeah, I think that Syracuse beats Houston, and I think Loyola, or however you want to say it, big man down low, with the mustache, I think they win their game as well against Oregon State. And I think it's going to come down to Syracuse or big man Loyola to make it to the Final Four. I think Houston's been overrated the whole year. I don't think they've looked particularly well in the tournament, to be honest with you. They barely pulled out a win against Rutgers. Mm-hmm. They did come back in the fourth quarter to win that game. But to me, I think either one of those two teams has the easiest road.
Yeah, I agree. I had Loyola as the team I think will get there now. I'm with you. I don't trust Houston. I think Syracuse look really good. Buddy Boeheim, Jim Boeheim's sons look really great in this tournament too. And Syracuse just has that pedigree. They got that it factor about them when they get to this point. But I look at Loyola, they're going to play Oregon State. Again, Oregon State's had a great run, but I'll take Loyola in that game. And I again, even if Houston beats Syracuse, I don't think Loyola goes in that game saying, "Oh, we're playing a 2 seed." This team is not afraid of anybody. They'll go up against anybody on any given day. And they're not playing, they don't have Baylor, they don't have Gonzaga, they don't have Michigan. They don't have to beat a number 1 to get to the Final Four. So I like their chances of getting there.
For sure. And some people would argue and say that Baylor has the easiest path.
Yeah.
You look at Arkansas, Oral Roberts matchup in potentially the Elite Eight, but you can't sleep on Villanova. And I know we talked last week about where we were going to see Villanova, what kind of team Villanova is going to bring.
Mm-hmm.
They've looked damn good this tournament.
Yeah, they have.
Their last win was convincing. They looked amazing in that game. So Villanova, Baylor, that's an intriguing matchup to me. I'm going to be watching that game.
Yeah, I agree. I think Villanova will give Baylor all they can handle. And then if they do win, if it's not the Cinderella, Arkansas is not going to give up. They're a tough out too. So I really can't say the South is, Baylor getting through. There's no cakewalk for them. I think they've looked really, really strong so far in the tournament. But again, it's any given Sunday, this team can win. These teams can beat Baylor. So on the opposite side of the coin, who has the toughest road to the Final Four?
Ooh, I think the toughest road you got to look at potentially Alabama or Michigan.
Yeah.
I think the Alabama UCLA game is going to be a good game. I think Alabama might find a way to pull it out, but I like the way UCLA has played. They're hitting their stride at the right time. But Michigan, Florida State is going to be a tough game. I do think Michigan finds a way to win that game. But then you have in the Elite Eight, you have Michigan against Alabama. So either one of those teams has to get by each other, even if they get to that point. So to me, that is really tough. I look at Gonzaga against Creighton. As much as I've dogged Creighton, they luckily pulled out a win in the first game. They got outplayed in the first game. They pulled out a win by 1 point, but then they looked really good in their last game. But I still think Gonzaga beats them, but you can't sleep on USC or Oregon. I think both of those teams have played. I mean, Oregon's only played 1 game, but USC's looked strong. I think Gonzaga has a tougher time, but the real hard one for me is the Michigan and Alabama both have a tough path to the Final Four.
Yeah, I think Alabama's got really tough. You mentioned UCLA, they got to beat them, which will not be easy. And then the thing about Florida State is they're so boring. Oh, they're hard to watch. I give them credit for that's the way they play, but they're so slow and they're so boring. So Michigan just has to play their game. That's the biggest fear for them in that game. Just don't let Florida State dribble the ball 0.5 a kilometer of an hour, and then you'll probably win. But Alabama, Michigan would be a great Elite Eight game. I think that'd be the marquee one. That unless something crazy like Baylor, Arkansas, say those 2 teams that wouldn't do it for me. Gonzaga, USC, maybe, but I think Alabama, Michigan, it would have the potential to be the best game of the tournament. And it's in the Elite Eight. I think those 2 teams that would be a hell of a game. And we've already seen LSU play Michigan, which I agree with you. I think has been the best game to date in the tournament. Another SEC Big Ten matchup. I wouldn't complain about that one.
Yeah, and the thing about Michigan and Alabama, they're both quick trigger offenses. They shoot within the first 10 seconds of the clock. Alabama, I've been watching. I don't think they held the ball for a shot in the last 10 seconds of the shot clock yet. They play so fast, and it's exciting to watch. And same with Michigan. If they make one pass, they get an open shot, they're taking it. Mm-hmm. Where Florida State, on the other hand, I struggled to get through that one. That was tough for me to get through, especially because I had them to tie and they ended up winning, so I didn't win any money on it. So that one hurt too, but they were just so boring. For me, as a college basketball fan, I want to see action. In this tournament, you're looking for action and they just don't bring the action. But hey, they've made it to the Sweet 16 with the way they're playing. So they could be a team that frustrates a team like Michigan, Michigan likes a fast tempo game where them only maybe getting or shot every 30 seconds because Florida State's holding the ball. If they don't get into a rhythm, it could really hurt them.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. Yeah, Michigan needs to play their game and be careful because Florida State's just going to muck it up the whole night. And they're kind of like the New York Islanders. I kind of correlate them to that, where they're going to play their game. And if you let them play their game, they're going to have a good chance of winning because it's their style. So beware of Florida State for sure. So before we get to different predictions or different ideas that we have going forward, is Gonzaga the clear-cut favorite for you, or is there another team right there with them?
For me, it's got to be Gonzaga. Just they've been the best team in the tournament. They've lived up to everything that they said that people have predicted. And like you said, and I think they have more left. I think that they haven't played their best game yet. Where you can say some of these teams that have made it to the Sweet 16 have played their by far the best game that they will play all year. Where I don't think Gonzaga's done that in the tournament. I don't think they've needed to yet. But I love the idea of them playing in a Final Four matchup. But they might be the favorite. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse or Loyola as a favorite because they have the easiest path to the Final Four, one of those two teams. And like you say about any team, you got to get there. Before you can win it, you got to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say they're definitely the favorite. For me so far, Baylor has become the second team for me. I think they've looked really impressive. Obviously, they've only beaten Wisconsin and Hartford, so grain of salt. But I think they've looked really impressive the way they move the ball. They're getting open shots. They rebound well. And, Michigan, maybe I should say Michigan because I think they had the toughest opponent in the second round. They got through LSU. LSU was a really good team this year, and they got through that. So that if they're gonna have to get through that LSU, possibly Alabama and Gonzaga to get to the final. And that's murderer's row for Michigan, but they got through their first test, so maybe they're all the number ones I think have looked pretty good so far.
Other than Illinois. Illinois struggled.
Yeah.
Other than Illinois, they look terrible.
Didn't look good even in the first round. So.
No. But how cool is it? This tournament is, I think, the only sporting event where everyone talks about making it to the semifinals.
Right.
Everyone talks about making to the Final Four. Like in hockey, you don't talk about, man, if that team made the Western Conference final. Remember back in 2012 when they made the Western Conference final or the Eastern Conference final? Yeah. No, you talk about the Stanley Cup or you talk about the World Series. Remember that team almost made it to the World Series? It just doesn't happen. But in college basketball, honestly, it's like making the Final Four is it's almost better than winning the tournament, as weird as that is to say. It's talked about more.
Right.
Like you remember the teams that make it to the Final Four, I think, more than the team that won the tournament for the average basketball fan, because I feel like a lot of basketball fans in this tournament don't even watch the last game. They watch up until the Final Four, and then after that, they're like, oh, there's the Final Four. Let's not watch anymore. It's kind of a weird dynamic, but it's unique for sure.
Yeah, no, it's so true. You think Loyola Chicago made it to the Final Four. Like, they didn't win it. They got to the Final Four. Toronto made it to the Final Four in 2002. Guess what? They lost. Who cares? Nobody. Maybe Leafs fans that are just used to losing will say, "Hey, we made it to the conference final in 2002." But who cares? But
in basketball, making it to the Final Four is seen as such a big accomplishment.
Yeah,
they celebrate. Oh, they were a Final Four team in 1986. Yeah. Well, how'd they do in the Final Four? Well, they lost by 25, but who cares? Final Four.
We had good effort to get there, but no, it's so true. You never see that even in in college football, the college football semifinal. You're not going to see Clemson say, "Hey, we made it to the final. We made it to the college football semifinal last year." Who cares? You didn't win. But it's weird in pro sports. I
In
heard this.
basketball, I think it's just the way the tournament's set up with
Yeah,
the 4 different zones, the regions. I
right.
think just winning your region brings such a big accomplishment that it's kind of
Yeah.
celebrated, and they market it that way. They don't market it making it to the championship game. They market it making it to the Final Four.
No, you're right, because they get a trophy after they win their region. So it's interesting that way. I agree. I saw this poll question this week. So before we get into predictions, I thought this was interesting. I thought I'd bring it up to you just on the fly here. If you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, and this is, I'm not being facetious. I'm being 100% truthful in this question. Would you rather win the national championship in basketball or have the Michigan football team beat Ohio State in November?
Oh, man, that if you're asking a diehard Michigan
What do
fan,
you think they'd say?
oh, man, that is a tough question. For me, as just an outsider, obviously you want to see a team win the title,
Mm,
but the hype behind that, behind the Ohio State Michigan football game is massive. And I think if both those schools are playing well, then whoever wins that game has a good chance of making it to the Final Four.
right.
So I think you have to go with the football win. I think that it's like when the Leafs play the Habs,
Mm-hmm.
when you say, well, you guys lost to Winnipeg 3-1 the other night. Oh yeah, well, we beat the Habs on Saturday.
Yeah.
Or, a Habs fan, oh, you guys lost to Philly the other night. Oh yeah, well, we beat the Leafs back last time we played them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think that on the poll, you're gonna go with the football game in the middle of the season.
Yeah. I I agree. I think if you ask most Michigan fans, it's not even close. I think it would be the football team by 100. Just to put this into context, or if you don't follow college football like me and Ryder do, Michigan's beaten Ohio State twice in the last 18 years. Um, this rivalry is one of the biggest in sports. I'm not kidding. Pro sports, college athletics. These two schools hate each other, hate with a passion. And I think obviously Michigan, Juwan Howard, he's doing great things with his program. But I think you're like, okay, let's give Jim Harbaugh a win over Ohio State. Like, we need this football win. And yeah, it's not going to hang a banner, but we get our pride back a little bit.
It's just exactly, and it's the same type of thing where you said, Matt, you're going to meet so let's pretend I'm going to Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to meet the love of your life, but she goes to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? And if you're an Ohio State fan, I don't know what you do in that situation.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I don't go to Ohio State or Michigan. I'm not put in that predicament, but those two schools, you'd think it would be Michigan State, but no, it's Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah.
They hate each other with a passion. And I think it's got to be the football over the basketball. But in basketball too, it is a big deal, but it's not like the football.
No.
It's not like winning the football game over Ohio State or over Michigan. But that kind of matchup has become kind of a joke lately because Michigan's been so bad at football. They're the Creighton of football to me. They cannot win the big game. I know we're going on a tangent here. We're getting
I love it. I love this. Yes.
But they are such a joke of not that the team is bad, but the hype
they're
around
bad.
them is such a joke.
They're bad. They're bad.
The hype around Michigan football is the biggest joke. Maybe I also hate Michigan as a Notre Dame guy, but the hype around them is a joke. But flipping it back to basketball, the question and basketball and football, I think it's got to be the football.
Yeah. Yeah, no, just to get a bow on this, the Indiana Hoosiers, that program is known as a basketball school. I think you'd agree with me when I say that. I mean, they're basketball through and through. They're better at football than Michigan is. They're a basketball school, and they're better at football than Michigan. I mean, that just tells you how bad Michigan's been. But I like that I brought this up because this was fun. So looking ahead to the Sweet 16 / Elite 8, is there any upsets that you see or any predictions that you have going into the weekend?
I have Syracuse over Houston as my upset. To me, that one that screams upset to me. That's the one I'm kind of looking at. Don't sleep on UCLA. They've been playing some good basketball. They play late at night, so a lot of people might not have caught them. But don't sleep on them. The USC Baylor, there's no kind of upset there. To me, I think both teams are playing well. Either team could win that game. Not Baylor, sorry, Oregon, the Oregon USC game.
Yeah.
But for the Elite 8, the big upset, I think you're going to see Syracuse over Houston. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think Oral Roberts' run will come to an end. I think Arkansas will beat them. Loyola beating anybody at this point is not an upset to me anymore because they should have been a higher seed to begin with. They kind of got hosed there. Well, you could say Illinois got hosed because they had to play them in the second round, which I'm sure they weren't that happy with. But looking ahead, I think Alabama, Michigan is the most intriguing one because you're like, well, I mean, it's a 1-2, but Michigan will go in the favorite, so it'll be a slight upset. Gonzaga against USC Oregon winner will be a big game, obviously for a multitude of reasons. But whoever wins that one is going to have a tougher game than I think obviously Gonzaga will. They're playing your Blue Jays who should go out, with little fanfare. So who knows if they ride in a wave of momentum, that could obviously we've been saying all night Gonzaga is the best team, but it's one game. So that would be an interesting one for me just because I don't think Arkansas, the way Arkansas play, I don't think they'll beat Baylor. I think USC or Oregon would have a puncher's chance of beating Gonzaga in the Elite 8.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's some great matchups. I think if you're a basketball fan, you're a college basketball fan, you're ecstatic about the matchups this weekend. And I think if you're just someone who tunes in once in a while, if you get a day this weekend, maybe take a few hours off, maybe don't plan that trip, that drive to Moncton. If you're a Fredericton person, maybe just put your feet up and watch some basketball. Enjoy what's coming because there's some great matchups in the Sweet 16, and there's going to be some awesome matchups in the Elite 8.
Yeah, no, well said, but a lot of fun games coming this weekend. It starts Saturday, the Sweet 16, which is kind of weird again, the new schedule this year. It's a lot of time off between games, but
very strange.
Build suspense.
Yeah,
I thought it was
very strange.
Friday, but it's Saturday afternoon. Loyola and Oregon State will get us going. But going into the weekend, Matt, any before we wrap, any gambling tips?
Well, I know I talked to you before we came on here. So my dad and I have gone, and I can't make this up, the afternoon games, we've gone 14 out of 16, correct. We have been on fire in the afternoon. We are 1 for 16 in the evening games. That is what we are, 1 for 16. So my tip for me, I'm going to say to myself, is only bet the afternoon games. But one thing I think I actually was kind of correct on last week was looking at some underdogs and covering the spreads. There's been a lot of spreads covered in the tournament. But I think with these matchups in the Sweet 16, I think you got to look at ties. 5 points either way is such a wide gap with how some of these matchups are. There hasn't been many tournaments that have come down to buzzer beaters, but I would keep an eye out for some buzzer beaters in this Elite 8 and the especially the Sweet 16. I predict 2 or 3 buzzer beaters in these 8 games in the Sweet 16. I think there's going to be some really close matchups. So I would look at betting some ties.
Yeah, no, interesting for sure. 5 points. I mean, a lot of these games are under 5 points. I mean, unless you're Gonzaga, I would say don't do that for the Gonzaga games. Every other game, do it because Gonzaga they could be up by 4 with 3.5 minutes left. They'll win by 21 somehow. But the rest of these teams, like USC, Oregon, definitely take a tie there. I mean, that's going to be tight. But no, I like that. So bet the afternoon games, bet some ties, and you'll have some success. But But Ryder, we'll obviously be back after the Elite Eight before we tee up the Final Four and everything else going on. But you got some playoff games this weekend to coach. Am I right?
Yeah, so my coach a U13 AAA team. We are the Pee Wee AAA Express or U13 Express. Sorry, we're 2-0 in playoffs, and we got a couple games coming up this weekend, and looking to hopefully secure first place moving into the semifinals. But thanks for that. I appreciate it. The boys have been playing well. I had a good practice tonight with them, so we're looking forward to playing against the U13 Canadians Friday night in Tri-County. So I appreciate that, and if any of my players are listening, make sure you get to bed. You're past your bedtime.
Yeah, you heard him. Get to bed. Big game Friday night, so gear up for that. But everybody, thanks for listening. Enjoy the tournament. It's supposed to snow on Saturday, so put your feet up and enjoy all the action. But until then, I'll be back soon. But everybody stay safe, take care, and we'll talk soon.